not really funny, but it feels like the debate was years ago.
Right.
It feels like the Trump assassination attempt was months ago.
Right.
It feels like the RNC was weeks ago, and now we have the latest July surprise of Joe Biden, because we were going to talk about the RNC, the good and bad of the RNC.
Right.
But right now, front and center right now is the whole thing on the Democratic side. Joe Biden's out of the race. Kamala Harris is now the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. Have at it. Your thoughts? What do you think? What all that stuff's going on?
Well, listen. Again, thanks again for having me on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. It's
Absolutely.
good to see you again.
As
Yeah,
always.
it's been a wild couple of weeks here, hasn't it? Like you said, I mean, I was all excited to go over the RNC with
And we
you, and
will.
then
And we will.
we had the Trump thing happen, like you said, and then all of a sudden, Biden's dropping out or being forced out, depending on who you believe, and Kamala Harris as the presumptive Democratic nominee. Listen, I'm not a fan of her, obviously, for political reasons. I have nothing against her personally. I've never met the woman. Um, we don't line up philosophically. We don't line up as far as politics go. She wouldn't be getting my support. I do think it's very ironic and funny that the party of we the people and making sure every voice is heard and every vote is counted has now decided, since their candidate didn't look like he was going to win, that they would just find a way to get him out and replace him, effectively nullifying 14 million votes, Democratic votes. I would have a problem with that if the Republican Party did that as a primary voter. I think that just slaps in the face of, the threat for democracy and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But having said that, Democrats can do whatever they want, I suppose. If that's and to be fair, we've watched Joe Biden degrade for months, if not years. I think the first time you and I talked was we talked about Biden's faculties and how they were failing him, and this was, years ago. So
Yeah.
it's not been a good time. It probably was the smart thing to do. I don't think Biden had a path to victory, despite what he and everybody else was saying.
Yeah.
Just as early as 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, everybody was like, "Oh, he's gonna win, and Trump's in trouble." And I've never seen him more vim and vigor, and he's got such a record to run on. And then like that debate happened, and everybody jumped off, and they're like, "Nope, you got to get out." So, it's going to be an interesting race. I don't think it's a slam dunk for Trump. I do think that right now there's a love affair and there's a honeymoon with this story of Kamala Harris. But I think once we get into her record and what she accomplished as vice president, which I think I could probably fit on the palm of my hand, it's going to be a tough sell for a lot of Americans.
Yeah. No, you touched on a lot of things that I agree with you on, especially that I've been saying for years. Number one, the democratic process, or quote unquote democratic process, is not very democratic at all. I've been on record saying that the GOP. Hell, I said to you either in the episode in March or before that.
That's right.
The GOP process is more fair than the Democratic Party process is. There's these sub delegates and all this. Stop. It's not fair.
Super delegates.
Joe
yeah,
Biden,
we talked about that with Bernie. Yeah, what they did to Bernie.
Joe Biden should have been primaried. There should have been a primary. End discussion. I've been on that for at least a year now. Look, it's their party. They run it as they will, but it's just fascinating that a party that claims to be for the people and democracy and all this stuff runs a party opposite of that. I 100% agree with you on that one, without question. It is what it is. Do I think Kamala Harris has a better shot being Donald Trump than Joe Biden? Absolutely. I said that Donald Trump had us in the bag. The polling was showing that was going that direction, and it's not like Joe Biden was going to get any better. He's not going to get any younger. The gaps, he's still going to gap. The gap going to be gapping still to January 20th. You know what I'm saying? Inauguration day. And the optics look bad. So on one hand, I agree Kamala has a better shot. To me, Kamala, if anything, I'm not going to say Kamala is going to be Trump. First off, that's not on the table. I still put Trump as a slight favorite. But there's more politically speaking, there's more upside of Kamala being in place here than Joe Biden, for obvious reasons. But yeah, does the process suck? Absolutely. the process does suck. But again, it's their party.
So there are a lot of deficiencies from Joe Biden, the candidate, that Kamala Harris won't carry. That's clearly true. That's the good news for Democrats. The age and the mental faculty issue, all of those things are off the table now. I don't know if I would try to make that argument against Trump now. I know that they're trying to do that, which I think is a little
the age issue.
Yeah, it kind of slaps in the face of irony when you're like, wait a minute now. Just 2 weeks ago, again,
yes.
You're like, oh, Joe Biden is spry, and he's so that part frustrates me. But whatever, politics is show for the most part.
Let me tell you why. Because to me, it was never about the age part. Age never bothered me because there are sharp people who are in the 80s that can do the job.
Yeah,
you may not agree. You may not agree with Nancy Pelosi's politics. She's very sharp her age, and she's older than Joe Biden. She's very sharp. There are people in that age group. Donald Trump, as much as people love or hate him, he's way more with it than Joe Biden is on optics. That's not in the conversation. So it wasn't about Joe Biden's age. It's that Joe Biden was old and he looks diminished.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact, and you can no longer hide that anymore.
Right.
So that's all I'm going to say. Go ahead, continue.
And honestly, I mean, they weren't really doing a great job of hiding it, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, but again, we don't really need to. Joe Biden can ride off into the sunset now, and I guess he has addressed the nation tomorrow about his plan moving forward. It's Kamala and Trump right now, and like you said, it's going to be a lot tighter than I think people expect. I'm really anxious to see Kamala debate, because in 2016, when she was doing the primary debate, she was terrible. And she doesn't really have a lot to run on. So it's going to be interesting if this becomes a discussion about the vision of the country moving forward and the accomplishments that we've had in the past. There's not a lot that she can hang her hat on as vice president. Her big ticket item was the border czar, or being in charge of straightening out the border, and the border is a disaster. And she never went to the border, as far as I know. And last I heard, she went to Galveston or something, but never even visited the border. So,
and she had the word salad with that whole thing. I saw the interview again yesterday. I was like, oh my, that's not a good look.
Yeah. I've never been to Europe either. Right. I mean, they're going to run those things ad nauseum. You have that. You have all the stories about her not paying attention in briefings. I mean, Politico, I believe, or Axios, one of those websites ran an article a few months ago about how she never pays attention in security briefings. Like there's a lot of now, of course, all that information is going to go away now, right? Because she's the belle of the ball. But politics is optics. I'm not ignorant to that fact. So you have the, I guess, de facto first Black woman, even though that's a discussion I don't know. It's just it's insane. We don't talk about policies anymore. We don't talk about what's best for the country. We turn everything into these histrionic arguments about democracy and taking away people's rights, and Trump's a dictator and Kamala Harris is a socialist. And I mean, I long for the days when we used to have substantive policy debates. You and I have talked about that, as many times as we've talked together.
Yeah.
But those days are probably long gone. So it's just going to be whoever shows up, I guess, or shows out, and that's going to be who a majority of the people vote for.
So when you were on the podcast back in March, actually, I asked you to forecast the election from then, and I asked you who will win. You said you saw Joe Biden's a favorite.
I did.
Now, before Joe Biden was out of the paint on Sunday, did you change your tune on that?
I did. Once I watched the debate, I knew it was over. I know that, and that's not breaking news. I think most people kind of came to that conclusion. He had obviously been faltering for months after that, and it got to a point where I don't think you couldn't hide it anymore. I know even the press was starting to kind of turn on the administration. They were hiding him more often. I think there's a lot of interesting stories that are going to be told in the Biden legacy, in 10 or 20 years, once we get through this, about all of the things they did to hide his mental deficiencies and faculties. But yeah, there was a point there where after that debate, I thought he should stay. If he stays in, he's going to get mollywopped. I mean, he's going to get run. Trump looked his usual self. And at that point, he was still maxing out about 47, 48. But there were I think a lot of people saw that with this guy. Not only can he not do another 4 years, I don't even think he's running the country now,
Yeah.
So, at that point, and, obviously Democrats thought the same thing. And, I get it. I get the wanting to kick him out and get somebody else in because they knew he wasn't going to win. But again, like we said earlier, you should have just wrote it out like you said you were going to, because that's what the will of the party was, the people. But anyway, I did. I had changed my mind. I thought at that point, okay, he's going to probably win regardless of, his deficiencies. I mean, there's no way this country is going to elect Joe Biden.
And now with Kamala being in there, you think it's now 50-50, or you still think Trump's the favorite?
So I think that's a good question. I think it's going to be closer.
Right. The polling is showing that too. Also, the polling is showing that.
Yeah. So I have a problem with polling.
I was just going to ask you that. Where are you on polling? Some of that question. Actually,
yeah, you see a lot on my social media when I talk about that for both sides. Right. I say, both sides tend to get excited about their polls when it favors their candidate, right? Mm-hmm. And then when it doesn't, they go, well, that poll's, well, that's fake, or that's so I don't know. And we've gone through 3 election cycles now, the 2016, 2020, 2024. I guess 2020 was a little closer, but that election was so wonky.
Yeah.
But when you look at the polling, I mean, I don't know what the sample sizes are. I don't know how the data is accumulated now. It never seems to follow any common sense trends. So I don't put any faith in any of the polls, to be honest with you. I really don't. I think a lot of these outlets manipulate the data. I mean, and you can do that. You can manipulate the data to say whatever you want. It doesn't have to reflect the real voice of the country. So yeah, I think that Kamala got a bump, now that she's the head, and all this money and all this flowing free press. So yeah, it makes sense. Do I think that she all of a sudden is 10, 16 points ahead like I saw on some? Come on.
No.
Let's slow down. So I don't. But going back to your question, I do think it's going to be closer. I do think that Kamala has her work ahead of her, and I think Democrats have their work ahead of them because she's not a strong candidate. She may have a story, but she's not a really good debater. Her record is paper thin, and I don't think she's as strong or as likable as, like a Joe Biden was. And also from a policy standpoint, she's very, very progressive. I mean, very, very, very progressive. I mean, I've heard her in some of those primary debates and town halls say some really, really progressive ideas.
It's funny because
far to the left of Obama.
Because I've heard some of that too also, but I also heard that she's very corporate as well too. So, I mean, a lot of progressives don't like her. She's too corporate. She's too snuggy with the Obamas and the Bidens and all those donors and whatnot. So I don't know.
That may be, but it's going to be a tough sell. I mean, that debate performance is going to tell the difference. I think they have one debate, I'm assuming, in September, I think. With them being side by side, that's going to be really interesting. And Trump is going to have to really balance himself, because anytime he comes at her, it's going to be played off as, a man coming after a woman. I mean, he got away with it from doing it with Hillary because Hillary is so shrill and wasn't very likable to begin with. So, you're coming after a woman, you're coming after a person of color. It's going to be a circus. So he's going to really have to be careful.
Yeah,
I really would have liked to see the JD Vance and Kamala debate. I think that probably would have been a lot more substantive. Mm-hmm. But we are where we are.
Yeah, I was saying earlier to a couple of friends of mine that unlike with Hillary, who was very unlikable, and the whole aura, her was just people just didn't like her, even on both sides really. Trump can't use the same hits with Kamala using Hillary, because there's that lane where even and you might agree with me on this, we'll see. There's a lot of black folks who may not like her, but you don't get to tell her you don't get to talk to her that way. That's still my people. I don't like her, but you don't get to talk to her that way. And if Trump's not careful, he can all of a sudden get folks to vote against him just based on simple things like that. That could be a situation where if Trump isn't careful, he can make her almost martyr her in her own her own community of people who may not even like her, but because that guy's attacking ex-black woman, no, you don't get to talk to her that way. That's our girl, even though we don't vote for her, but you don't get to talk to her that way. So there's pitfalls there.
I could see that. I don't know if that's going to be enough to move the needle when you're talking about the economy, when you're talking about inflation, when you're talking about gas prices and energy. And again, we're going to get into, they're going to get into these substantive debates where they have some really, really different ideas about, the electric cars and versus fossil fuels, how we deal with inflation, government spending. I mean, he can, if he is measured in which is a big ask, but right. So, I mean, any normal politician could take apart her substantive ideas and say why they are or not great for the country moving forward, short term and long term. He's got to find a way to do that. If he can stay in his lane and do that, I think he'll be okay. If it turns into, I know he's already calling her Laughing Kamala. I mean, if it turns into that kind of circus, you're exactly right. It's going to turn people off. It's going to turn women off. It's going to turn off people of color. Maybe not enough that, it makes a huge difference, but in a place where he was making really, really sound ground, he's going to give some of that away if he gets out.
I tell some supporters today too. Also, like Trump, as popular as is in the party, he does have a ceiling. He does have a ceiling. Whereas Joe Biden has a ceiling also too. Kamala has a ceiling herself, but Kamala's ceiling potentially could be a lot larger because of the much of the demographic she can attract. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just a fact. But depending on how she campaigns and who she attracts to, women and color and all this other stuff and all the potential things that you can see if she wins this election. First black woman president, first black, what you want to call it. A lot of those like check marks that those are things that are attractive to people. I mean, they shouldn't be just that. It should be policy based. But again,
you're right. But the difference between Kamala Harris and Barack Obama is personality. Barack Obama was inspirational. Barack Obama, if you remember, if you go back and listen to his campaign and he was such a smooth politician.
Yeah.
I don't want to say snake oil salesman, but I mean, he knew how to toe the line between, talking about inspiration and change and all of these things versus sounding rational and sounding like measured.
Yeah.
I don't get that from Kamala Harris. I've heard her talk. She does not sound like she's going to be somebody that's going to bring the country together. Right. I mean, that's going to be the deciding factor, I think, in this election, especially, is who's going to be the one that can articulate bringing the country together.
Right.
Joe Biden said that, and from what everybody tells me, that's why he got elected in 2020. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's what I think a majority of the country needs and wants to hear right now. Yes, there's problems with the economy. Yes, there's problems at the border. There's wars in Ukraine. There's war in Israel. I mean, there's things going on, but we need a sense of unity. And I think, like I told you before, with my issue about voting for Trump, this turnaround is because as a voter, like I want to vote for something. Like I'm tired of just voting against an ideology, right? Like I don't
welcome my world, brother. Welcome to my world.
I don't want to just vote again. You're right, right? I don't. It's deflating. It's not inspiring at all. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to go vote, but I'm going to vote to keep Kamala Harris out of the office. Okay, well that doesn't inspire me. Like that doesn't make me excited.
I agree.
I want to get excited about the country and want to have something to look forward to and be positive. And we just don't have that in our politics anymore. It's sad. It makes me very sad.
I'm very fascinated to see the polling. I want this polling to bake 2 weeks. They want to bake again after the Democratic convention next month. And then we'll have a better idea where this race really is. Once you see the logos comes out and you see what she picks as VP, which, by the way, I mean, you're not a Democrat, but who would you think, if you're a Democratic strategist, who would you say would be the best pick for her, in your opinion?
If I were her, I would pick a governor.
Yeah,
I would pick. I hate the optics. I know that's what they talk about. Well, she should pick a white guy. That's kind of what I've heard from the tea leaves is that she has to pick a white guy or like Gretchen Whitmer, who. Yeah. I mean, good luck with that. I mean, she was during COVID, she was an awful governor. But I would probably pick somebody. I would pick a governor. I would pick somebody with some executive experience, somebody kind of, again, calm and measured, somebody that's not a bomb thrower, and that's I guess it's the idea of, do you want to charge and excite your base at the expense of everybody else, or do you want to show that you're going to try to like bring the country together, right? And we can talk about Trump and Vance in a minute if you want, but that,
yeah.
What I really long for is somebody that, again, has some executive experience. I think that would do her really well. Somebody that, even if it's a blue state governor, I think Andy Beshear, I believe, the governor
of Kentucky,
was a guy that they're talking about. That I can understand that, right?
Right.
Somebody that is going to, like I said, there's a sect of the country who will probably have a problem voting for her anyway, just on optics and just whatever. You can appeal to those voters, those blue dog Democrat voters who may feel funny about a woman and or a woman, if they've got somebody, if she's got somebody on the ticket that's more palate cleansing. So that's what I do. So saying that, she's probably going to pick like Al Sharpton or Jeffries.
She better not. I can't stand Al Sharpton. I can't stand that race baiter. No, I was saying Josh Shapiro probably the favorite because PA, strategically speaking, they need Michigan too and Wisconsin, but PA is the gold mine of this election.
So there's the whole thing about the him being Jewish, though, right?
Yeah, I heard that too.
So the progressive left, they're gonna throw their hands up about him being Jewish.
They're gonna make this about referendum on Trump and referendum on women's rights, and that's the advantage they have because Kamala, being a woman now and being the lead on the ticket now, can actually sell that now better than anybody else.
That's true. Now, to be fair, and I'm pro-life. I stand on the side of Trump's position on abortion as far as it goes. Put it to the states. I'm okay with that. We don't need a national federal ban on abortion. We don't need, that's counterproductive, and it's just toxic, right? As much as you want to fight for the right to live, there are certain circumstances and situations where something like that is warranted, and that's a discussion for, again, families and doctors. I completely am okay with that. I understand that. I can compromise on that, and I, to my understanding, Trump's ideology, or at least his thought on abortion, goes that way. So I think it'll be less. I don't want to say offensive, but less partisan. How about that? Yeah. Less partisan. His agreement on that. But you're right. I mean, they're going to turn it into, he wants to take away women's rights. I mean, it's already attack on democracy, attack on women's rights, attack on. It's like you can beat Trump by not being so bombastic.
Yeah,
and that's the thing that the left, I don't think, understands. Like, they're so angry and so vitriolic, and they hate him so much that they just lose all this common sense. Like, you can beat him on policy. You can beat the Trump doctrine on just, being measured and common sense and talking about, okay, why these things
said that
work.
2018, you're going to martyr this guy. You could beat him on policy. And
it did. But they get so mad, and they get like foaming at the mouth, and they start calling him Hitler and and that all that does. You're just going to take people who are independents and who are like, okay, you know what? He's not Hitler. You can't always call somebody Hitler. It's just not.
Yeah,
it loses. It's lost its feeling. It's lost its merit.
Like, do we understand what Hitler did? I mean, Hitler literally killed 12 million Jews.
You got like Rachel Maddow, like, oh, he's going to take me off the air. Come on.
Like, it's not working, dude. And all you do is martyring him. I said it in 2018. I said it on the show in 2018. You can beat the guy on policy. Stop martyring this guy.
Yeah.
And they did that.
Yeah.
It wasn't for COVID, they would have won a re-election.
Yeah.
Honestly. So, but yeah, I'm with on that one. To be honest with you, like with Trump's position on abortion, he's actually left of me.
Yeah.
I think I told you that last time on the podcast. Like, he wants 15, 16 weeks. I'm actually more conservative on him than he is. And I'm pro-choice.
Mm-hmm.
But the state rights thing, that's a little more complicated. I see the value in state rights because it leaves more people decisions instead of like just a whole conglomerate. Because I don't want Arizona to tell me what Florida should do and vice versa. And everybody has different economies and different priorities and different. You know what I mean? So I definitely see the value in state rights. I just don't know if women's rights is the one thing that should be limited to that also too. That's a discussion another day.
Yeah, so, no, for sure. We can talk about that.
Yeah, of course.
For sure.
The RNC.